You ever seen a lion before it attacks? It doesn't growl, it doesn't roar, it just watches, waits, and then, boom, it strikes. No warning, no buildup, just precision. And that's how real power moves, quietly. Because here's something people get wrong all the time. They think being loud means being strong. They think yelling makes them heard. They think reacting gives them control. But it's the exact opposite. The loudest person in the room, 9 times out of 10, they're the weakest. Because when you're truly in control, you don't need to perform. You don't need to prove anything. Calm, centered, watching, and that unreadable stillness, that's what people fear. Because what you can't predict, you can't control. And what you can't control, you fear it. That's how it works. Think about it. Most people are like glass, easy to read, easy to shatter. You poke them, they flinch. You insult them, they explode. You press the right emotional button and boom, instant reaction. But when you poke someone and they don't flinch, that's when the game changes. Let me give you a real example. There was this guy I used to know, quiet guy, not flashy, didn't talk much in meetings. You'd probably walk right past him and not think twice. But one day, someone tried to publicly humiliate him. Big corporate meeting, full of executives. And this one dude, probably feeling insecure, took a cheap shot, called him obsolete, mocked his ideas, tried to make him small in front of the entire room. Most people, they jump in and defend themselves. Maybe raise their voice, toss an insult back, try to reclaim their pride. But not this guy. He just sat there, looked up, locked eyes with his attacker and calmly asked, "Are you finished?" And then, just like that, looked back down at his notes and kept working. No reaction, no outburst, no need to prove anything. The room went dead silent. The attacker shrunk in his seat like a balloon losing air, because that one moment said more than any comeback ever would. It said, "You don't move me, you don't get to decide who I am." And that unshakable calm, that's power. We live in a world obsessed with noise. Social media, 24/7 news, people talking, tweeting, posting, performing. But stillness is rare, and in its rarity, it becomes terrifying. There's something deeply unsettling about someone who doesn't need to be seen, to be felt. Someone who doesn't raise their voice, but somehow commands the room. Someone whose silence doesn't say, "I don't care," but instead says, "I see everything, I feel everything, and I choose not to react." That's the presence we're going to build. Not by faking confidence, not by puffing out our chest, but by mastering our internal state, by rewiring how we show up, by practicing what the Stoics taught, the art of self-command. You see, the Stoics knew something that most people today still struggle with. It's not what happens to you that matters. It's how you respond or don't respond. Epictetus said it perfectly. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And here's the kicker. When you react with nothing, with pure focused control, you're not being passive. You're proving you've already won the real battle, the battle inside. When you don't flinch, when you don't respond to every provocation, every insult, every attempt to shake you, you're not showing weakness. You're showing depth. You're showing power. Because here's the truth nobody talks about. When your enemy gets to choose your emotions, they've already won. Let that sink in for a second. If they can make you angry, if they can make you explain, if they can make you feel like you have to prove yourself, then they're not just poking your ego. They're controlling your peace, and peace is the real prize, not status, not reputation, not revenge. Peace. So when someone insults you, don't flinch. When they try to pull you into drama, don't step in. When they try to manipulate you into proving yourself, don't take the bait. Give them silence. Give them stillness. Give them nothing. Because when you give them nothing, they're forced to sit with their own noise. They expected chaos. You gave them calm. They wanted a fight. You gave them a mirror, and the mirror always wins. Think about the last time you saw someone completely unshaken by chaos. The person who doesn't rush to speak, doesn't need to fill the silence, doesn't need to dominate the room to lead it. There's something magnetic about that. Everyone slows down. Voices drop. People tread carefully. Because real power doesn't need to chase attention. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need applause. It just is. Unapologetically. That's the kind of energy we're building here. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that makes others lower their voice around you. Not because you demanded it, but because your presence enforces it. The truth is, most people are addicted to reaction. They're fueled by drama, driven by ego, dependent on approval. But when you refuse to play that game, when you don't flinch, you force them to face their own weakness, and most people can't handle them. They'll call you cold or arrogant or too quiet, but deep down they feel something they don't want to admit. Respect, because they know what it takes to stay calm when everyone else is losing it. They know what it means to walk into a room and not bend yourself just to fit in. They know they can't move you, and that's terrifying. So if you've ever felt like you didn't fit the loud world around you, if you've ever been the quiet one, the calm one, the unreadable one, good, that's your power, that's your edge, that's your weapon in a world that's forgotten the value of stillness. The goal here isn't to be seen, it's to be felt, without ever needing to say a word. Let's get one thing clear. You don't build power by accident. You don't wake up one day with unreadable presence and calm confidence baked in. It takes work, quiet work, daily work, internal work. And if you want to build the kind of presence that can walk into any room and shift the energy just by existing, then you need something solid under your feet. You need an internal foundation that can't be shaken, no matter what chaos storms around you. That's what the Stoics mastered. They weren't just thinkers, they were builders of discipline, character, clarity. And today we're going to break that down into 6 inner states. Each one is a piece of armor. Each one makes you more untouchable. Let's start with the first. 1. Calmness, the weapon of stillness. Most people confuse calm with passivity. They think if you're calm, you're soft, passive, weak. But that's just projection. Because real calmness, the kind you train through discipline, is one of the most powerful forces on earth. Calmness says, I don't need to react, I choose to respond. I once knew a woman named Clara. She worked in a toxic corporate environment where gossip was currency and passive aggression ruled the air. There was this one coworker, bitter, loud, always trying to provoke her. But Clara, she never took the bait. She walked in calm. She walked out calm, smiled, took her notes, did her job. She didn't defend herself, didn't gossip back, didn't try to win. And over time, something strange happened. The attacker got louder, more aggressive, more desperate. But the more she pushed, the smaller she looked, until eventually, no one listened to her anymore. Because when you keep punching a wall that doesn't move, eventually people stop respecting the punch. Clara didn't fight. She didn't expose anyone. She just let her stillness do what words never could. That's calmness. 2. Clarity, seeing without reacting. The Stoics were obsessed with clarity. They knew that without a clear mind, you're just another piece of driftwood being tossed around by life. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." In other words, it's not what happens, it's what you believe about what happens. And when you have clarity, you stop seeing life as something that happens to you. You start seeing it as something you can navigate. Clarity allows you to pause before reacting. It gives you space between stimulus and response. And that space? That's where your power lives. 3. Restraint. You don't owe anyone a reaction. Let's be honest, most people are addicted to their emotions. Someone insults them, they lash out. Someone disagrees, they explain. Someone mocks them, they try to prove themselves. Why? Because we've been trained to perform under pressure. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. You don't owe the world a reaction. In fact, the more predictable your reactions, the easier it is to control you. You're like a puppet, and anyone who pulls the right emotional string can make you dance. But when you learn restraint, when you don't rise to every challenge, don't bite every bait, don't fight every battle, you become dangerous, because now no one knows what moves you, and people fear what they can't move. 4. Detachment, refusing to be played. Let's talk strategy. Your emotions, your dreams, your fears, your routines, they're all leverage in the wrong hands. The more you speak, the more you reveal. And the more they know, the more they can use against you. That's why detachment is essential. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you don't broadcast everything you care about. I knew a man named Caleb, soft-spoken, smart, disciplined. When people asked him personal questions, he didn't lie. He didn't shut down. He just smiled, gave a light answer, and redirected the conversation. Some called him mysterious. Others said he was arrogant. But over time, they respected him because no one could figure him out. They didn't know what made him angry, what made him insecure, what he really wanted. And when office politics exploded, guess who was untouchable? Caleb, because he never gave anyone access to the levers inside his mind. They couldn't pull what they didn't know existed. 5. Presence, energy that doesn't ask permission. Presence is not about attention, it's about intention. I had a mentor named Aurelius, not flashy, not loud, didn't dress to impress. But when he walked into a room, everything shifted. He didn't demand respect. He didn't interrupt or posture. He just existed, calm, present, unapologetically still. People lowered their voices around him. They checked their tone before speaking. Not because he asked for it, but because his energy commanded it. And here's the wild part. He rarely spoke. He'd sit through an hour-long meeting, say maybe 5 words, and still walk away as the most powerful man in the room. Why? Because his presence didn't need a performance. It was built on consistency, character, and restraint. You don't get presence by chasing people's approval. You build it when you stop needing it. 6. Conviction, owning who you are without apology. This one is the most personal because it's not about strategy, it's about alignment. It's about finally deciding that you're not going to shrink yourself just to make other people feel comfortable. We live in a world built on applause and social approval. Most people bend. They edit their words. They laugh when they don't feel like it. They nod when they disagree. Why? To stay likable, to keep the peace. But here's the truth. Authenticity is confronting, especially to the inauthentic. I knew a man named Jace. He wasn't rude, he wasn't edgy, but he had this intensity. He didn't adjust his tone to win people over. He didn't follow trends. He wore what he liked. He said what he meant. He stayed quiet when others gossiped, not out of fear but out of principle. And people, they didn't know how to handle it. They called him intimidating. But what they were really feeling was pressure. Pressure to face their own masks. That's the paradox of conviction. It doesn't try to change you. It simply refuses to change itself. And that refusal, that's what makes people nervous. Because when you finally stop adapting for attention, when you stop apologizing for who you are, you become the kind of person others adjust themselves around. You don't get there overnight. It takes time. But each of these 6 states, calmness, clarity, restraint, detachment, presence, conviction, they're not just traits, they're tools. Tools you sharpen through practice. Tools that make you less reactive, more rooted, and ultimately, more powerful. The question is, are you willing to build them? Because if you are, the world's noise stops mattering. You stop playing their game, and you start moving from a place of pure, quiet force. So now that you've seen what real presence looks like, now that you understand calmness, clarity, restraint, detachment, presence, and conviction, the question becomes, how do you live it? Because here's the truth most people avoid. You don't become powerful by studying power. You become powerful by practicing stillness in a world that's constantly trying to pull you out of it. And that's not easy, especially today. We live in an age that worships noise. People don't just talk, they announce. They don't just act, they broadcast every intention before it even becomes a reality. You've seen it, right? The constant stream of, "I'm working on something big," the humble brag posts, the cryptic captions, the dopamine of digital applause. And don't get me wrong, sharing progress can be good. But the moment you start mistaking attention for advancement, you lose. Because here's what happens. The more you talk, the more predictable you become. The more predictable you are, the easier it is to stop you. That's why silent builders are so dangerous. They don't warn you. They don't explain. They don't promise. They just disappear into the work. And when they return, it's already too late. The Stoics understood this on a soul-deep level. They weren't interested in shouting about virtue. They lived it. They didn't post affirmations. They became the affirmation. Epictetus said it best. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Let the others talk. Let them sell the dream. Let them collect applause for the idea of success. You chase the thing itself. Let me tell you about Samira. She worked in a fast-moving firm where everyone was trying to get noticed. Big personalities, constant self-promotion. Look at my new project. Guess who's getting promoted? Side hustle this, networking that. Samira didn't play the game. She was quiet, focused, almost invisible. While others bragged, she worked. No show, no flair, just results. And for a while, no one noticed her. They thought she was soft, passive, maybe even forgettable. Until one day, her name came up in a company-wide meeting. Turns out, Samira had quietly built a system that saved the company millions. While everyone else was performing, she was producing. And by the time they realized what she'd done, it was already too late. She'd been promoted, transferred, elevated out of their reach. No warning, just impact. That's what silent power does. So let's bring it back to you. You want that kind of force? Here's where you start. 1. Shut the door literally and metaphorically. Find time each day that's just yours. No noise, no scrolling, no performance. This is where your clarity is built. Whether it's a 10-minute meditation, journaling your thoughts, or sitting with your breath, make it a ritual. Silence isn't just absence. It's a form of inner resistance against chaos. Make space for it. Stop narrating every move. You don't need to tell the world what you're about to do. You don't need to explain your next goal. You don't need to post your plans. Just do them. Announcing things gives people a sense of control over you. Let them guess. Let them assume. Let them wonder. Don't correct them. Don't defend yourself. Move in silence. Let results echo in their place. 3. Guard your emotional blueprints, your triggers, your dreams, your insecurities. Those aren't weaknesses, but they are vulnerable data. And in the wrong hands, they can be used against you. So don't give people full access to your inner world. Be warm, be kind, be present. But don't be a blueprint. They don't need to know what makes you tick, especially not your enemies. 4. Slow everything down: your speech, your breath, your reactions. Move 1 second slower than the world. Not because you're behind, but because you're ahead. Rushing is a form of panic. Slowness is a form of control. When you move with stillness, people adjust to your pace. They lean in, they listen closer, they calibrate to your rhythm, and in that moment, without saying a word, you've taken the lead. 5. Do the work. Let it speak. No big speeches, no promises, just relentless, quiet effort. Build the thing, refine the craft, train the skill, let the results speak for you. Let your silence become attention. Let your lack of warning become a form of pressure. Because when you finally show up with something real, they won't be ready. Not because you weren't capable, but because they weren't paying attention. You see, most people lose power not because they're weak, but because they waste their strength trying to be seen. They stretch themselves thin, trying to impress, explain, and defend. But when you stop doing all that, when you hold your truth close, when you move with intention, when you train in the dark without applause, that's when you become something else entirely. You become unreadable, and unreadable is unstoppable. There's something deeply unsettling about a person who doesn't need approval, someone who doesn't perform, who doesn't chase applause, who doesn't bend their edges to fit the mood of the room. That kind of person, they're a mirror, and most people can't stand to see themselves reflected in someone who hasn't compromised, because it forces them to ask, what did I give up just to be liked? And that's why they fear you. Not because you attacked, not because you shouted, but because you stood there, fully yourself, completely still, absolutely untouchable. And that silence, it echoed louder than any scream. So here's your challenge. From now on, speak less, mean more, say no when it's a no, walk away when it's over, stand still when they expect chaos. Don't announce your rise, build it, and let the silence speak for you, because the most feared man in the room isn't the one who yells, it's the one who doesn't need to.